Hello, hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here, Basketball Rewind, of course, and I am joined by a former guest, but a guest who is back again, which is good. Guests are coming back. That would be Reece from the Reece Report. So he is here to talk about another prospect. The first time we discussed any sort of prospect at all was, I believe it was Jordan Hawkins that we were talking about. So I have two questions before we really get into that, and then I have another kind of a side thing to talk about. So first and foremost, since looking at Jordan Hawkins, do you still feel the same way? Because I know that was when you were first looking at prospects. I'm not sure if you feel the same way. And then I'll just ask the second question right away, which is how do you, I guess, looking at the Raptors as we get closer and closer to draft day as well as free agency, do you think that your opinion on what the Raptors need in a prospect has remained the same or changed?
So with Hawkins, I still would be fine with the Raptors drafting him. Um, I still think he's a very talented prospect. There are other guys that I would prefer, but if they took him, no, I would not be disappointed. I think that he can give them a lot. The problem is that the Raptors haven't made up their minds themselves which direction they're going, and so I do not know whether the Raptors are going to keep certain players. Therefore, I don't know if he's a fit because the Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr. stuff is still out there. And so if the Raptors don't have Fred, then Hawkins certainly is someone that could help them. If they do have Fred, then you may not want to draft a Jordan Hawkins. And so it's difficult because the Raptors haven't chosen a direction yet.
So question to me and people, I'm not advocating one way or another in this specific conversation, but if you were to keep Fred, wouldn't you want Hawkins because he's more closer to an impact player and a more complete, I guess, mystery box than other mystery boxes?
Yes, because of the new coach. If this was Nick Nurse, then no, because he would never play. So because Darko is now the coach and is supposed to be a developmental coach and is said to want to develop young players, then he'll get minutes and he'll be able to develop. Um, Fred, I can't imagine will ever play 37 minutes a game under this coach. So, in that respect, and then if Gary doesn't come back, then that's more minutes for Jordan. So, in that case, you're correct. Um, but we'll get into the coach. I don't know much about Darko. I just know that he was in Memphis and was very helpful in developing their young core, which is a great young core, which gives me confidence in the hire that they've made. But I don't know too much about Darko outside of that.
Okay, fair enough. And then in again in terms of the players that you think that you need, and by the way, oh yeah, in terms of the players that you think that the Raptors need.
They need a shooter. 100%. They need someone who can shoot, especially from the outside, that can stretch the floor. Um, I would prefer they get someone who can also defend their position because the Raptors were terrible defensively last year. If even someone who's just competent defensively, someone who can stay in front of their guy, doesn't have to be a steals leader or a major blocker, just someone who can stay in front of their guy. Um, and I prefer someone who can move the ball because I believe with this new coach, there's going to be a lot more ball movement, less isolation. So therefore, you want someone who can move the basketball and also beat his guy off the dribble. So there are some options out there for that. I know that's asking a lot, but I think there are plenty of players out there that the Raptors can get that can do those things. Um, uh, and I certainly have a list of players that they can draft. Certain ones I'm higher on than others, but
We'll definitely get
yes,
into that in a second. I'll push back just a bit and defend Nick Nurse because I've uh been told that I'm a Nick Nurse hater recently. Not actually, but like some people think I'm a little bit too harsh on Nick Nurse. So I'll push back a little bit and say I do think that a guy like Hawkins could have played what I described Nick Nurse as in terms of his coaching style this past season is he didn't play the bench because he didn't think that they were worth playing because he didn't see
correct.
the talent. I
Yeah,
do think though he does have a track record of playing guys who are closer to being ready. Is going to prioritize. So I think because a guy like Hawkins or potentially the guy that we're going to be talking about in just a second in Kris Murray people, I believe that that is the type of player that actually would have played in the Nick Nurse system, funny enough. But
yep.
I think he'll also play under Darko. So, with that being said, today we're going to start talking right away about Basically, a certain Kris Murray, who happens to have a brother who did really, really well. And I might be mistaken this, but if I'm not, I think and I do believe that he broke the 3-point record for rookies, if I'm not mistaken. Now, one
Yes,
thing that is
correct.
interesting about that, before we get into him, is this: Kris was known formerly as the better shooter. Now, this year, he did not shoot very well comparable to previous years. Kris Murray is going to be about 23 years old when the season starts, so he is an older prospect. He stands at 6'8", and while I don't remember seeing his wingspan at the combine, we're just gonna go with his brother's wingspan because they're twins. Um, so I believe that the wingspan is 6'11", so very solid wingspan, very solid size. I believe he's 225, I think, around that, maybe
225. Yep.
225. Again, combine stats I don't have in front of me. He might be a little bit more, a little bit less, but those are a pretty good size. He's definitely going to have a little bit more meat on the bones than a Christian Coloco, for example, coming into this team. And I think finally, one of the main differences between him and his brother, not to be lazy with the comparison here, but he is a lefty. And there have been a couple of lefties. And by the time this comes out, we would have covered a certain lefty named Kobe Buffkin. So, with that being said, I'm going to go directly into his offense. We're going to talk about his offense very, very quickly. And I'm going to ask you, because I do have notes, I have looked at it. I'm going to ask you, what do you think about his offense?
Well, he's a tank. Let's start with that. He's a big dude. But I was surprised at how much finesse he had. He can certainly dribble and handle the ball for a big man. So that impressed me, and he's got some power in his moves too. So I was impressed that he could create his own shot and drive past defenses at his size. So that impressed me. He has pretty good range. Now I know this year he did struggle at 33% from the three, but he can make that shot, which would keep defenses honest. And what I found was when he was fake shotting that three, he was blown by everyone and getting to the rim. So that is a valuable trait you could use in the NBA. He can beat you inside as well. He likes to get in post position to beat smaller guards and smaller guys. And he likes to use the spin move. So Pascal should like that if he ends up a Raptor. You can show him a little bit of the ropes. So I thought that he's a player that's simple in a good way. He's a guy that what you see is what you get. You expect him to do certain things, and he does them well. I mean, he averaged 20 points in college. That's pretty good, and 8 rebounds. That's a really good average for a big man. Not much of an assist man, but he certainly can block players and steal the ball as well. We'll get into his defense, but like I was impressed with his big man offense and his ability to move like a guard.
Yeah, so the way that I describe him, I agree with most things. I do think that he could use some, simply put, a tighter handle, I'll say. But overall, for his size, he did pretty well at handling the ball. I will say this because I've been asked this before. I believe on the Live by the Three podcast. He's not quite what his brother is. So I think
No, no.
he will suffer from people looking at him coming in and being like, why isn't he like Keegan? I think that that's not really right or fair, but that's just how the world works.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think he is definitely a willing ball mover. He moves the ball around. He's a really good overall prospect. And I agree that he's going to come in and have a very instant impact, very, very solid size in both length as well as, girth and his ability to
Yeah,
move. But I don't see him elite in terms of the athleticism. I think he's a
right.
really good finisher. So around the rim, I saw that he uh, was able to shoot and finish around the rim around 66%, which is pretty solid for any player, but especially for big men. If you compare him to, for example, another prospect that we looked at in Taylor Hendricks. Taylor Hendricks, I found out after I didn't look up his rim and I didn't talk about it then, but it's come out that he shot under 50%. I think 48%. If someone in the comments, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, So when you compare two guys who are 6'8" and one shoots 66 by the rim, I think that that's really important. On the Raptors squad, there were times this year that there were bunnies and things like that that we did kind of we could have used an extra, say, 5 to 8 points that we just missed there. Couple other things just to point out for my concerns in terms of his offense. I think that he could benefit from learning how to move off screens and come off screens a little bit cleaner, a little bit quicker. I think that that is something that is definitely coachable, and maybe Darko, if we chose him with the second pick or whatever, um, I think Darko would be probably the coach that you'd want with that. I think before we get into his defense, the thing that concerns me, areas of concerns or areas for improvement, is that he struggled to get to the rim. So when he got to the rim, he was good at finishing. I think his first step is a little bit slower than
It
Keegan's.
is. It is.
Yes. And so
It
what
is.
I worry about with these types of prospects as I'm looking at more prospects is if a guy struggles to get to a rim, and then is he going to I worry about, does he rely on the mid range? And there were times when he did settle. I know that he didn't try to settle, so that's some area where I'm not as worried. And I will say this: the passing improved from year over year, as well as the free throw improved. Even though the shot went down his first year, he did shoot 39%. You put the amount that he shot, which is 33% this year.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about that. We haven't talked about how smart of a player he is. He's a really, really high IQ player. And
Yeah.
again, Messiah in his press conference, one of the things that he was asked very close to the end of the press conference was he wanted high IQ players as part of his system. So,
Yeah.
is there anything else in terms of his offense that you think that we missed?
He's certainly a Raptor type player. I've heard that said today. For those who like that.
Mhm.
He does have a slow first step. I did notice that. So is a slow moving player. So he relies more on power than speed. Um, and so that could be a concern. I think with him, he's going to need the right coach and the right fit um, to be effective, as effective as he wants to be. If you put him and he's like a main player, it won't suit him well. He needs the right system, the right fit, the right coach, and for him to be what he's going to be, to max out as a player. I think.
Yeah, I think that that's very fair. I think the other thing is that right now, with him being an older prospect, he might not have enough runway to gain the self creation skills. He's a play finisher right now. That's how I
Yeah.
describe him, which is not a bad thing.
Mhm.
I think that this is why we keep saying like second pick, second pick. And
Yeah.
sorry, I'm giving you all the second pick, guys.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. No, that's okay. I
But it's
wanted to
still
talk about Kris.
yes, you did. But it's still important to talk about these guys. I think the ringer, and I probably will have put this up when I first started talking about him, but I also put it up now. The ringer compared him. I don't know if they've changed it. They compared him to kind of like a Dorian Finney-Smith. I could see him similar in terms of movement as a Rui Hachimura, although I think he's a little higher like better court awareness. I'm trying to use better
Yeah.
terminology here, because I want to really talk about players in the right way.
Mhm.
In terms of his post play efficiency, to your point, he was a 92nd percentile offensive player. So solid post play.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's very,
Yeah.
very interesting. I almost compare him to a Taylor Hendricks, but not quite because he's much lower upside than Taylor
Yeah.
Hendricks. But he could come in and he will definitely play.
Yeah.
Here's my question before we talk about the defensive end:
Yeah.
is there redundancy?
I mean, if you're speaking of the Raptors, yes,
Yep.
there is, and that's a downer because it's like, damn, he's probably not the right fit because we already have players like that, and as I've told you before, we need shooters and guys who create their own shot and beat guys off the dribble. So he doesn't fit in that respect. Um, but I really liked his finishing inside, and as you pointed out, we were terrible finishing at the rim last year. I just, the amount of bunnies we missed was ridiculous. I mean, hopefully growth springs eternal, and that improves this year. But I digress. Uh,
Yes.
he, he, I was impressed with his finishing. Um, and so that's all I can really say. What I was shocked was that I saw some Otto Porter comparisons, and that's when I was like, wow, Otto Porter? I did not see that, but that was the one that I saw that kind of surprised me.
I can see a little bit of it. I think Otto Porter minus injuries, moved a little bit faster and had a much better handle. Even now, he has a fairly solid handle. But I think in terms of the way he moves the ball and gets into spaces,
Mhm.
I can see that. I I'm big on Otto Porter. It's not this
Yes.
podcast, but I really am. I think at this price point, I am definitely big on Otto Porter,
Well,
assuming that he comes back healthy, which
yeah.
I do think. He got surgery at the right time. Okay, so the other thing is Dorian Finney-Smith, and I've seen that. I think I mentioned that before. I can definitely see that comparison. I think that's a very strong comparison, especially as we go into talking about the defensive end.
100%.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
nice segue,
Yes.
eh?
This is when I'm going to start glowing because his
Yes,
defense is awesome.
take
That's
it
I'm just
away.
going to say it. Yeah, he was so good at point of attack defense. Iowa is not a defensive team, people. They like to outscore teams. If you notice their games, they're winning 93-79. They're winning a lot of high scoring games, which is probably why Murray averaged 20 points. They're not a defensive team, but this guy can stay in front of guys. And he's determined on the defensive end to make sure you don't get by him. And if you do get by him, his recovery speed is excellent. He's able to block guys from behind, which is something that I'm not comparing the two, but Horace Grant was excellent at doing this when he was with the Bulls. Um, his anticipation on D is also excellent. He seems to know where the player is going and getting to that spot. I was very, very impressed with his defense to the point where I'm like, if his offense is a little raw at the start, boy, uh, for certainly for Masai Ujiri, he loves players like that that can defend first. Certainly Nick Nurse loved guys who could defend first. Um, but he will give you a lot on defense, which will keep him on the court, even if his offensive game is raw at the start.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those are all good points. I'll say this to really focus in on this. He was a really good, strong lateral mover on defense. And to your point, and something I said in terms of his, I said court awareness. I was talking about the offensive end. On the defensive end, he also had really strong, high court awareness. I spoke to JD the other day, and we were talking about basketball IQ, and he made a good point where it's like, for a young player, you don't really know if they have basketball IQ yet because of where they are in terms of learning the game. And so I think court awareness is probably a better way of talking about it. For that reason, he was very rarely um he was rarely out of position.
Yeah.
He was
Yes.
almost always in position. Is always good at rotating over and as a defender, and also because he was able to stay in front of guys. Now, in terms of the point of attack, I don't know about that, but I will say this in terms of staying in front of guys, using his verticality without really getting into a guy's airspace or whatever. He was really good at doing that. He had solid timing and used basically he used those skills and those resources to generate blocks at a very solid rate. So I really really liked him. He uses feet well. He's a good feet mover, good footwork, really good fundamentals.
Mhm.
Other than the screen coming off screens
Right. Right.
thing. So
Yeah. When he gets into his stance, he's really tough to get by. Like, you know, um, that's what
yes.
I noticed. Yeah.
Now it's funny because it's like a guy like this. I say he's very solid. It's like Case Walsh. I say he's very solid, and people will say, "Well, what's the difference?" It's like, well, first of all, it's hard to explain because Case and Wallace, it's like is elite in certain areas and also has the upside. I think Kris, because of both of his age as well as other reasons, it's just a different type of player. Just so people know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Case, I'm not going to go into my Case and Wallace rant. That's we'll say for knock on wood draft night when we draft him. Yippee. So yeah. But the other thing that we didn't talk about, which I think goes to both kind of encapsulates everything. So he has really good core strength. I'm a big believer of core strength in all sports, particularly basketball, where you are in the air. So I think that contributes to why he has really good finishing. I think it contributes to why he has good defense and is able to stay and he will get not he won't get knocked off his spot. And it's also why on offense he's able to get to his spots as well. Maybe not like a Jet Howard, because I think Jet Howard has shimmy shake and like if you watch Jet Howard, I don't know if you have, if you're talking about a dude that is that big that can really dribble, although I think that he also could use some work on his dribbling, but there's a difference there clearly, but he does have really good core strength, good attributes, and I can
Yes.
see him coming in and contributing 15 to, I know I'm making it sound low, but 15 to 20 minutes on a consistent basis as an impactful player by maybe the second or third month is big for most rookies. Most rookies don't
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Like and he could.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, he's just so strong. Like when I see him on the court, he just looks so imposing on the defensive end, and
Yeah.
he's really good at defending without fouling. That's another thing that I noticed. He gets his body in there but doesn't foul, and he stays in front of you and then uses his length to knock balls away. So, yeah, his defense was impressive.
Absolutely, and like you said, he applies good on ball pressure. So yeah, I mean it's I think he's definitely someone who is very interesting as a prospect. Um, Now, with all that being said, okay, we've kind of talked him up. I think we've given him a good, shout. He is a lefty. Shout out to all lefties out there. And lefties always do have an interesting thing about them where they seem to have an advantage because players aren't used to guarding lefties. I want to kind of shift things away from Kris Murray really briefly and say, okay, at this point, you're not just starting to look at prospects. So my question is, within the Raptors range, I'm actually going to make it tougher for you. We'll say instead of five, four players.
Yep.
Can you give me four players? If you want to give me the ranking of the players, great. If not, that's fine. Just list the four players. But what are four players that you hope that the Raptors potentially have the chance to snag that could be in our range without trading up?
Right. So
So Scoot
I
isn't
have
isn't a possibility.
yeah, Scoot's not there, and unfortunately, your boy Cam Whitmore is all the way up to 4, so we're not getting
Hmm.
him either. He really went up the draft after you talked him up. Thanks, Kenyon.
I
Um,
haven't you know what's funny? I haven't done an episode on him. I keep talking about it and
okay,
I still haven't done an episode on him. So
so we're at 13. So there are some players above that I had originally that have jumped up. So I'm gonna do this as fair as possible. Jordan Hawkins for sure. We did an episode on him. I would not mind if we drafted him. Grady Dick, who I have loved from the start of us talking about the draft.
yes,
I'm all over Twitter on him, and God, if we draft him and he doesn't do well,
you're
I'm
buying
going
a
to hear about
jersey.
it. I will be buying his jersey right away, and I will be his biggest fan. I know there are some doubters on him, but I love the way he plays, and I think at this very minute, and I say this all the time, he seems to be exactly what the Raptors specifically need, and he has all the parts that they're missing. Now, he may not be the greatest prospect in the world, but what the Raptors need, he has and can deliver. And considering they have Pascal Siakam and Scotty out there, and that guy's open, I'm seeing 40% shooting right away, and I'm seeing a hell of a rookie. So there's Grady Dick. Kaysen Wallace, who I wasn't high on at first, has really gone up my board. Especially if the Raptors don't keep Freddie,
Yeah.
I'm a big Kaysen Wallace fan. I would love if he became a Raptor. He would be a big fan favorite,
I mean,
and would blow some
yeah,
people away,
to
right?
me, even if we keep Freddie, or
Yes, yes,
JTJ, I was
yes,
like, we need more
right.
guard depth, and it's
True.
like,
This is true. I keep saying if they get rid of Freddie. Yes, of course. We don't have anyone on the bench, people. I'm sorry, Malachi Flynn fans. He's gone.
there is I was able to talk to him a little bit and ask him a few questions about mental health
Really?
supports. Yes,
Yes, yes,
actually. So
yes.
I have to parse through that audio. I think for Malachi's sake, he could use a change of scenery, but I
Sure,
think
sure.
in general we could use some better, just some talent
Yeah,
injection at that
yeah.
specific role.
Um,
um
so Case and Wallace,
mhm.
I'm I was a little skeptical at first with the Drew Holiday comparisons, but like he kind of plays like Drew Holiday, so and his defensively is good. So I'm all for getting Case and Wallace. Even if he's over Grady Dick, I'm perfectly fine with him. And then on a smaller scale, I only had 3 on this, but on a smaller scale, because he's been talked up by people that have been on your show, Keontae George would be, I guess, a consolation prize if some of those guys go earlier than we expected. But for me, the 3 that I mentioned are the 3 that I really want the Raptors to draft.
So the 4th is Keontae. So if you were to
Yes.
say now I can say so Grady is going to be your first number 1. I'm guessing
Can I do a 1-1-8?
you can, but
Case,
if gun to your head, who would you sorry, Jaw, but who would you pick?
I wish. Man, oh man. Okay, I'll say Kaysen first.
Okay, all right.
I'll say Kaysen. Kaysen.
Can't ask my
Man, oh
follow-up
man,
question.
this is still tough. No, I'm gonna say Dick because I can't change now. I've been very
You can.
high on
There's
Dick.
nothing wrong with it. You can.
I-
You're not. You're not. Okay.
like,
All right.
let me put it this way: Kaysen and Dick are like nose to nose for me. Like, but Kaysen has qualities that Dick may not have, and so I've raised Kaysen up.
Okay.
So it's tough. Like,
Okay.
it's hard
So
for me to
if
pick.
you're putting
Yeah.
Grady first, my follow-up question for you is very, very simple.
Hmm.
Because if you went with Kaysen, I couldn't ask this question. So the
Right.
question is, given the fact that guard depth, because I'll tell you the reason why I like Kaysen above most
Hmm.
is he answers so many of the questions
He does, and
on
I know
both ends of
this.
the floor.
I know. I
And
know.
it's like,
I
and
know.
not only for like the immediate, but for the future as well. And it's like,
Yes.
when you have someone who does that, it's like Grady checks off a bunch of boxes. Say he
Hmm.
checks off, I'm just random. Say he checks off
Sure.
like 3 out of 5 boxes, and you're like, oh, that's nice. It's like
Yeah.
Kaysen checks off 5.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And he's a Kentucky grad, and Kentucky grads are known to be great NBA players.
Yes, they
Okay,
typically outplay their position. Draft
listen,
position.
I can't argue with you. And as I said, if it came down to, and someone said, you're crazy, draft Kaysen, I'm not arguing. Like,
Okay.
Kaysen delivers everything that Dick delivers, but gives you more defense. So, and he plays point guard. And I think the problem with Kaysen is, I think if he comes in, he could be already. He wants to start. I think he could be a starter right away.
He may
Um,
not
so
because of his demeanor. If you've watched, I'll send you some stuff after about it. But
right,
he's
right,
very he's chill. He's real, So I think
right.
um he might be more patient than people realize. I'm not
Hmm.
saying that he's not a dude who isn't who doesn't have like, I don't know. I don't believe in the whole alpha thing because that's
Hmm.
been proven wrong.
Yeah,
But even the people who did the study actually retracted the
yeah,
study. But I do think that he has like, some in
yeah.
him, but it's a moxie.
I will say, and I did look this man up before we did this because I knew we'd be talking about him.
Maxwell.
Kaysen.
Okay.
He needs to work on his left hand, and he
Yep.
needs to work on his first step. He's not the quickest first step guard that I've seen.
No,
So
he's not. He's not
in
Scoot.
yes. So in that respect, do I want that, or do I want someone who can shoot and be an impactful 3-point shooter immediately, and give you some athleticism? It's tough. Like, they give you different things,
Well,
right?
I'll say this
So
before his back injury.
yeah,
Before his back injury, I think this goes all the way till I think January 10th was the last date. He was shooting around 41% from 3
right,
until
right,
his back injury.
right.
So,
Would a back injury concern you?
well, it was back spasms, so no.
Okay, okay, okay.
Rather than like I need surgery and my name is Michael Porter Jr. I know that worked out people, but like
Wow,
that is concerning.
yes, I'm actually shocked that Michael Porter has come out of it with
Yes,
an NBA career. But
he had a
as
choice.
did Joel Embiid. Yes, Joel Embiid had major back problems as well.
Yes, didn't need
But yeah,
surgery though.
no, he didn't. He didn't. So
Mm,
Cason Wallace defense though is so elite that you
it
can
is.
gamble on his other parts developing. So from that respect, it's like, how can you miss on Cason Wallace, right? So it's very tough, as you've asked me.
I mean,
It's very
Samson
tough.
Folk described him even better than I could have by basically saying that like he's so good that he could come in to any NBA team essentially, and
Yep.
he's so good that he could clean up other guards' mistakes.
Yes, I agree completely.
And it's
Yep.
like,
Right.
so yeah,
And
but
that's something great. They can't do that. So, you know,
anyways, I'm
yes,
not trying
I mean,
to like
right, right.
you said that you're good, but I'm
Yeah,
actually surprised that you did at first say. But at least
yeah,
we were able to get some extra discussion points out of it. So
yes,
yeah.
yes.
So yeah, this has been really good. People, by the time this comes out, I would have already made my video about hitting 100 subscribers. So I just want to say thank you to all those people who continue to like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Share my stuff. Definitely check out Reece Reports. Sorry, I always have to like mirrored image.
Yes.
Definitely check out Reese's channel. That will be linked down below. I will also link the Ringer NBA Draft Guide. Um, really happy that I started focusing on draft content early this season. It really helped me to get through the season just from a watching standpoint because I wasn't focused on whatever it is that Raptors fans are going crazy about today, every day. So, with that being said, I think it's been good. Thank you for coming. We'll have you on, obviously, more. I don't really know my schedule for coming up to
Yes.
the draft exactly now,
Yes.
but we will figure it out and we will definitely chat. So, yeah, is there anything specifically that you're working on really quickly that you'd like to plug?
Just my show, The Reece Report. I just did a recent show of the top 20 NHL players of all time. I will be doing more basketball content. I'm going to try to cover the draft, certainly the Raptors draft pick. I want to find out more about Darko, maybe do something on that. And I want to have you on the show to ask you questions, to pick your brain. So yes, there are plans for the Reece Report. The summer is kind of slow. The seasons have just ended for both the NHL and the NBA. And now the off season begins, which is where all the fun is. And so there'll be a lot of debating back and forth. And I'm certainly going to try to have people on for that. So the Raptors are at a crossroads, and these are probably one or two of the biggest seasons for decision making in Raptors history coming up.
Yeah, well, especially again, we don't have the time to get into it, but with the CBA changing how it is, in terms of your ability to really acquire talent that could lead to stars and having more than say two-star players, I think this is probably the last season to be able to do that, especially now, one thing again, we don't have the time to go into this, but I'm someone asked a good question and I've been thinking about the same question as well. That question is that if you get those far off picks, say from Golden State, and those picks get locked out, does that mean that those picks now become end of the draft picks, even if Golden State is bad that year? Because Golden State traded it to you. I don't know. This is a good
Yeah,
question. But like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like I don't think that the full CBA is done yet, but it's like I've read through the last one. I want to read through this one because that is a very important detail. Because if it's not the case, and even if it is, but especially if it's not, this might be the last year to get like those far away picks. And that's really
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. This is a complicated CBA. I heard them talking about it after the Nuggets won the championship, how they may have a difficult time keeping the team together because of the new CBA. So
Well, that
I
you saw what
really,
they did during the
yeah,
finals,
yes, yes.
acquiring two picks this year, two second rounders, and it's like
Uh,
that's why.
that's remarkable that they did that. They did mention that, and I'm like, wow, they did that. That's crazy. But um,
Swift,
yeah, I need
concise
to.
moves.
Yeah, I really need to check out. I need to really look at the CBA. My brain wasn't ready for it when it happened, but I do need to look at this because, especially with the Raptors now, the amount of players that they have coming up for the free agency, significant players, I need to look at that and see what impact a max player has, what impact trading a guy has. for future draft picks, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's something I've gotta look at.
I will probably be covering it in some way, shape, or form on this. I will also share some of those resources when the time comes around. It is very interesting. I do think that you'll be fine as long as you avoid supermax contracts for as long as possible until you know for a fact that your team is ready. But yes, with that being
Yes.
said, we got to get out of here. It's been a great covering Kris Murray, as well as just all the other things that are happening, because now getting closer to free agency, getting closer to the draft, things are moving faster and faster and faster. So hopefully I get this out in time. I should get it out in time. I have I'm working on a Scoop video. So by the time this comes out, actually Scoop might come after this, because I'm hoping to drop that either on draft day or right before draft day. As well as I have a Kobe Buffkin video as well, which would have dropped by the time this will have dropped. So yeah, thank you everyone so much. Like, comment, and subscribe as well. Sorry if I didn't get a chance to cover City in time. I know someone asked for City. Probably won't get a chance to cover City, but if I do, hopefully I can maybe find some way, shape, or form to make it up to that person or cover them in some other sort of way. So with that being said, it's been good. Take care, everyone, and peace.